From the Roundtable at Uncle Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of WorkCom Matters, the central location for employees, employers, and also you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, news, and hopefully some answers about WorkCom Matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your WorkCom Matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You could be old school. Send a fax, 818-475-1437. Send me an email at wcexaminer@aol.com. With me in studio, my right-hand man, Mike Sima, the best-dressed man in California workers' compensation, Ted Durden, my protege, attorney Robert Ozeron, Scott Walton's on the board with the technical difficulties, and back at WorkCom Central, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Jake Paris. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WorkCom Matters. News, questions, hopefully some answers and some talk for you employees, you employers, and we haven't forgotten about you, you independent contractors. Although California is cranking down on the independent contractors, I think California has made a pretty bold statement. Independent contractors, get your asses out of California. We only want employees. But, you know, we've got a great show. We're packed full of news, topics tonight that are on the list that we are ready to speak of for you employees, employers, and independent contractors. We're talking about Iran. We're talking about Trump pulling out of that deal. Gina Haspel, the nominee for CIA director, faces Congress. SpaceX is now here in Southern California in the port of Los Angeles. I'm happy about that. Of course, we've all heard about the volcano that's erupting in Hawaii. Patriot National Insurance, their bankruptcy is in the news. AIG, Uber, the American worker, and drug use. Starbucks has to list a cancer warning. UC employees are on strike. Opioid lawsuits are once again in the news with WorkComp Matters with the homeless. We also have some OSHA reports. Governor Deukmejian passed away, and Robert will like this. Sears and Amazon. I don't know, but Sears is up like 20% because they did a deal with Amazon. And, of course, last but not least, the Boy Scouts are going to allow women in. But before we tackle those issues, I just wanted to give another very personal, sincere, and thoughtful thank you to Hillary Bricken for coming on the show last week and talking about the legal issues regarding cannabis. I got to tell you, I was somewhat nervous because I didn't have my security blankets that I have here now. We're at full strength, and it's just so comforting to have all these guys around me, whereas last week it was just me and Hillary at the round table. But I was just totally impressed with her. I mean, she's about Robert's age, give or take 32, 33. She's got a gazillion-dollar law firm that's 4 offices in the Pacific Northwest, an office in China, and an office in Spain, and I was blown away. But she was humble, she was well-spoken, clearly knowledgeable, and she has that type of personality that when you first meet her, it's like she's so friendly, but she's knowledgeable, confident, a fantastic attorney. And for attorney Hillary Bricken, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on to WorkComp Matters, and we hope to see you within the next 365 days. That being said, we're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, $1 a day, A1 Law. And if you want those concerts, sports, theater tickets, front row sold out, it doesn't matter. I've known Brian at Santa Monica Tickets for over 20 years. give him a call at 310-395-8587. Once again, thanks for joining Work Comp Matters, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And if you listen to the show and you don't like it, well, subscribe and tell a friend anyways, damn it. This is what we're all about. We're getting the word out. We are truly free, and all you got to do is one click and you're in, whether or not you're listening in your car, on your Bluetooth, on your smartphone, at home, at work. It doesn't matter. We will be here for you 24/7 with one click. With the first news story of the day, he's my right-hand man. He keeps me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mike Zyma.
Thank you. President Trump announced on Wednesday that North Korea had freed 3 American prisoners, removing a bitter and emotional obstacle ahead of a planned meeting between he and the young leader of the nuclear-armed nation. The release of the 3 prisoners, all American citizens of Korean descent, was a diplomatic victory for President Trump and in some ways the most tangible gesture of sincerity shown by North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, to improve relations with the United States after nearly 7 decades of mutual antagonism. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is now in Korea for more discussions with North Korean officials about the expected meeting between Mr. Kim and President Trump. And folks, I think this is a really big deal.
This is a huge deal, but it seems like all the credit is going to Trump. Ted, Robert, do you think Trump should? I mean, they're talking about him for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, he seems like a shoo-in for that at this point, right?
But is he really responsible for this?
No. I think he was a front runner already at this. He's a shoo-in. If he doesn't get it at this point, it's. I mean, he ended the meeting itself will garner him the Nobel Peace Prize.
Do you think he deserves it?
Sure, if North Korea is being honest about denuclearizing their country, sure.
I don't think so. I would disagree with that. And the only reason that I say that is because of the fact that I think the reason that Kim did it is he's trying to achieve that which eluded his father. His father wanted validation on the national stage. That's what he wanted. And he wanted a world leader to meet him and visit with him. No one ever did. So Kim, in spite of all of his bravado, threatened with nuclear war and so forth and so on, he saw that the only thing that he could do was to make some sort of gesture. So he's freeing the Korean hostages that he had. And as a result of that, you got Mike Pompeo that went there and negotiated for President Trump to meet with Kim. That gives him recognition on the national stage.
And they're talking about Singapore in early June as the location.
I thought it was right on the DMZ.
No, it's going to be Singapore, apparently.
Right. And I mean, is it quite an accomplishment? Absolutely. But I have yet to hear anything that indicated that Trump himself had anything to do with it. I haven't heard anything about that. Now, I could be wrong.
Well,
but
we'll see what happens in Singapore. Really.
Well,
absolutely.
I think it's generally the American posture around the world has changed. The view of America has changed. And it appears that leading through strength and peace through strength is a good policy. Even if you have somebody perhaps a little bit too bombastic as president, right? Still, that type of personality at the head of the most powerful military in the world will give any person who wants to live a second thought, before they engage in any type of belligerent behavior. So that, I don't know. I think I'm surprised with the success, I'll be honest, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I mean, the stock market, the tax cuts for everybody,
Do you think Un is acting in good faith, Robert?
Pardon?
Do you think Un is acting in good faith?
Also, I think you guys should forget, Kim Jong-un is about my age, right? He's about in his 30s?
Yes, he is, absolutely.
And he was schooled in Switzerland, I believe, right? He went to school in the West.
Yes,
I think he is acting in good faith.
Well, but I also just think from this perspective, perhaps living in North Korea as a 30-year-old guy, maybe you want to go on Instagram. Maybe you want to play Fortnite like the video games with everyone else. Maybe you're watching the rest of the world engage in things that you love, like basketball and sports, and you are locked out of this. And on just a personal level, you want this because you might be a
I've
hedonist.
often-
You might be addicted to pleasure.
I've often doubted whether he could put two coherent thoughts together in his mind.
But
I think
Robert,
the guy's a lunatic.
if I'm not mistaken, Robert wasn't talking about him. He was talking about the common citizen.
No, I'm talking about Kim Jong-un.
Oh, okay. Well,
Kim Jong-un wants access to all these things that probably he
can
sees
do
in this world.
He can do whatever he wants.
No, he really can't.
Oh, yes, he can.
No, he can't travel. He can't do that. Right? He can't.
true.
He can't engage in any type of open
I mean, he went
trade.
he went to China a couple of weeks ago, and it was like a big deal. He hadn't done it in like 15 years or something.
Yeah, and that's just his next door neighbor. He can't go anywhere in the West where he was arguably educated, right? Where he probably got a little bit used to the culture of the West. To think that now he has to live in his own oppressive country is going to be tough on anybody.
And those are all good points. We're going to have more talk, more news, and hopefully some answers for employees, employers, and you independent contractors. Stories about Gina Haspel, the nominee for the CIA director, SpaceX property lease in my town of the Los Angeles port, and, of course, the Hawaii volcanoes coming up shortly. When I was speaking last week with Hillary Bricken, an issue came up regarding attorney-client privilege and stealing the files of Michael Cohen. And I specifically asked Hillary, what did you think about the authorities coming in and taking Michael Cohen's files? And she said essentially, well, if they came in to do it to her office, she wouldn't have a problem because she has nothing to hide. And I was stunned by that. Another person that was stunned by that is one of our regular contributors to the show. He's still got his license to practice law after 45 years, yet he's been hanging out in Germany, halfway around the world for about the past 3.5, 4 years, to talk about attorney-client privilege. And the question that I asked Hillary Bricken, please welcome Mr. John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp International Report from Munich. The one thing about the Donald Trump presidency is that it always gives us something to talk about. In recent weeks, the FBI raided the offices of Mr. Trump's scumbag lawyer, Michael Cohen. They seized files and perhaps working notes. It's going to be determined by a special master appointed by the federal judge as to whether or not the files are covered by attorney-client privilege. So that, of course, brings up the first question, which is, what is attorney-client privilege? It is actually misnamed. The attorney has no privilege. It is the client's privilege, which in this case happens to be Donald Trump. The evidence code in California says that the client, whether or not a party, has a privilege to refuse to disclose and to prevent another from disclosing a confidential communication between client and lawyer. The lawyer, interestingly enough, has no privilege, and if the client instructs him to disclose it, he must disclose it, because only the client holds the privilege. I'm always amazed at how many attorneys think they have a privilege. Secondly, the FBI searched his office with a search warrant. That's interesting because the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. Okay, I mean, do we really think that if he weren't Trump's lawyer, his offices would have been raided? I find it hard to believe. But anyway, I'm always amazed at how class and race play a role in people's attitude towards the Constitution and the rights guaranteed under it. Last week, Steve had a very bright, young, accomplished attorney named Hillary Bricken on the program. She happens to be white. I know that because her picture is on the website. And she obviously is upper middle class, if not higher. When Steve asked her if she would object to the FBI searching her office, she blithely said, "Well, I've got nothing to hide. Let them go." Well, you know, if you're white, middle class, or upper middle class, maybe that's the attitude you have about law enforcement in general. But let me tell you a story. I used to go to a restaurant with my kids called Casa Lupe. This was after I was divorced, and they were still little. Casa Lupe was owned and managed by Jose. His family had a whole string of these restaurants. Jose was a typical American. He was born here. He'd served in the U.S. Army, so he was a veteran. And he was young. I was probably 40 or so, and he was younger. One night, after a golf tournament, which his restaurant had sponsored, and which I had won, I was sitting at dinner. I'd had a few beers, both on the course and at dinner, when one of the diners comes up to me and says, "You're Jose's friend and you're a lawyer, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you better go to the safe room." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." So I go back to the safe room, and what do I see? I see Jose in handcuffs behind his back, and I see members of the LAPD Vice Squad with their weapons drawn. So I walk into this room, needless to say they were not happy, and I look at Jose and I say, "Jose, don't say a word." They look at me like, "Who are you? Why are you here?" I said, "Well, I'm his lawyer," at which point I won't go into the specifics, but I assure you they tried to get me into a fight so that they could undoubtedly do some work on me. But my mama didn't raise no fools. So then I said to the cops, I said, did you read him his rights? And they looked at me and said, "He's not a suspect." Funny, he's got his hands behind his back in cuffs. He could have fooled me, but technically they were correct. So I told Jose, "Don't say a word." And I also told Jose, later on, "This is only happening because you're a Mexican-American." Well, after Jose had consulted with a criminal lawyer, we were talking one day afterwards at the bar, and I looked at Jose and I said, "Well, what did your criminal lawyer say?" And he said to me, "This only happened to me because I'm Mexican-American." Because it's a very nice restaurant, and one of his jilted ex-girlfriends had said he was taking bets at the bar. Jose was not a bookie. I mean, I've never been to a bar as a regular where you couldn't lay off a bet, but trust me, he was not a bookie. Anyway, that's the difference between being upper middle class white and being upper middle class Mexican American. So, personally, even though the attorney-client privilege in this case would protect Donald Trump, whom I don't like, and even though the search and seizure would protect Michael Cohen, whom I do not respect, I prefer the U.S. Constitution. I prefer the attorney-client privilege. That's the View from Munich this week.
And, I got to take exception with John, but I'm also going to respectfully take exception with Ms. Bricken. As I indicated on the show, when she said she would have no problem with the FBI raiding her office because she has nothing to hide, I was shocked. John was also shocked about that. However, John sort of alluded to that whether or not either, and John, please forgive me because I didn't get this qualified, either you're a white attorney in an established upper-class neighborhood and or you have white clients in an upper established neighborhood, or you're a Latino attorney and or you cater to Latino clients in lower class households, that may or may not have something to do with whether or not the FBI is more liable to raid your office. Now, first, and I know the guys want to comment on this, first let me say I'd be totally pissed off. And we've seen in workers' compensation many times, in fact, wasn't it the 8 attorneys and the multiple doctor's office that were raided? They come in, they take your files, they take your computers.
Right.
I mean, if you've got stuff up in the cloud, if you have stuff up in the cloud, you can recover it. But if you don't, your business stops right there. Okay, they're not coming in to make copies.
Right.
They're coming in to take and drive away. So I am never in favor of that. However, that being said, I am a hearing representative, so I hold my standards to even a higher standard than an attorney and certainly an officer of the court. I've done absolutely nothing wrong. If the FBI comes and wants to raid me because maybe I referred my client, one of my clients, one time in a year to some doctor who's being accused of fraud, and then some justification has been issued for my office being fruit of the poisonous tree, I mean, you want to take the one file? Well, maybe I can see it. But to take my entire office, it would totally piss me off. Now, Robert, you are a sole practitioner. You work clearly, 15, 20 hours a day. You're above board. You're following all the rules. I would think it would piss you off, too.
I wouldn't be happy about it. I don't know where I would fit into John's paradigm as a white Jewish middle class guy
We
helping
didn't
Latinos.
say Jewish. You said white and upper class. But go
Well,
ahead.
where does that leave the middle class? We're always getting squeezed, and it's not fair. Not even in John's paradigm am I involved. It's okay. So I would be a little bit upset, especially if it's, like you say, some sort of guilt by association. I think it's not enough. And there is a lot of hysteria in the workers' comp world. I've seen it myself. I have a client of mine who was charged with workers' comp fraud, later dismissed, but she got caught up in the hysteria.
Was that in L.A. County?
Yes, it was.
Because usually they're very reluctant. At least historically, they were reluctant.
Now,
Yeah.
Ted's been in the business for 20, 25 years, and during that time, and I didn't clear this with you first, but you worked for a doctor. I don't know, but sometime during those 20, 25 years, that doctor, whether or not you were working for it or not, got raided for fraud issues.
He most certainly did.
And comment?
Well, basically, it was, in my opinion, it was a fishing expedition. They didn't find anything. Now, did they shut his office down? No. They came in, they took a snapshot, they took a certain number of files, but they didn't find anything.
Did they arrest the physician?
No, he was never arrested. He was never arrested. He was never charged. That never occurred at all. They just grabbed a bunch of files, and he continued to do his business.
Now, Mike's worked most of his career for insurance companies, and of course, generally speaking, insurance companies never get raided because they never do anything wrong. Right, Mike?
Well, the main problem with equal application of the fraud laws, in my opinion, is that employers who BS their insurance company about causation, something happened that was reported, they knew about it, and they said, no, he didn't say anything. That's criminal behavior. Pursuant to the statutes, they should be prosecuted. They're not prosecuted nearly as often as the applicants. I'm just talking about what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
And once again, all good points. With the second news story of the day, I've known him for 20 or 25 years. I originally coined the phrase best dressed man in California workers' compensation. Without further ado, in the second news story of the day on Work Comp Matters, Mr. Ted Durden.
The Los Angeles City Council unanimously agreed to lead to a lease agreement Tuesday that would allow SpaceX to build rockets capable of interplanetary travel at the Port of Los Angeles. Mayor Eric Garcetti confirmed rumors last month that the Hawthorne-based company was expanding its Los Angeles area operations to Terminal Island there. SpaceX plans to construct a new manufacturing facility for its Big Falcon rocket, which company founder Elon Musk predicted would be capable of reaching Mars, by 2022.
Yeah, but he can't even get the Model 3 off the ground.
He's got manufacturing problems and money problems.
Sounds like the Spruce Goose to me.
Have you guys seen the rockets when they land back?
So they land back on a barge in the ocean.
Amazing, right?
amazing. It is
Unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah, but I think most people that listen to the show are more concerned about buying a $30,000 car that's completely electric and won't break for 10 years, right?
Right, yeah. SpaceX will have use of 19 acres at the port that were once part of the Southwest Marine Shipyard, where naval destroyers were built during World War II. Initially, the company plans to erect an 80,000 square foot facility on the site, but the complex can eventually be expanded to over 200,000 feet. SpaceX plans to employ about 700 people at the new location.
I am definitely in, and when that happens, I want to go down and take a picture,
Awesome.
and maybe I'll meet Elon Musk,
But
shake his
Elon
hand.
Musk's behavior has been reported as bizarre lately, like that shareholder meeting.
Yeah,
that was bizarre.
Yeah.
but he has always had a tendency to be erratic. That's not surprising. Yes, absolutely.
Genius, I guess.
Genius has a tendency to be erratic. With the third news story of the day on Work Comp Matters, he's my protege. He's been an attorney for almost 6 years now. Absolutely refuses to represent those defendants. But if you're injured, go and see him. He will stand on his head to make you a deal. Without further ado, Mr. Attorney Robert Ozeron.
Well, I don't absolutely refuse anything if the price is right, there, boss.
I know that's right.
Okay? It's America, after all.
Don't make dollars that don't
That's
make
right.
sense.
That's right.
Note the third news story here. Gina Haspel, President Trump's CIA director nominee, did not apologize Wednesday for her role in using enhanced interrogation techniques after the 9/11 attacks, but told a Senate panel that she would not revive those practices. quote, I understand that what many people around the country want to know about are my views on the CIA's former detention and interrogation program, Haspel said in opening remarks before the Senate Intelligence Committee at her confirmation hearing, whose public session lasted 3 hours. Quote, I have views on this issue, and I want to be clear, having served in that tumultuous time, I can offer you my personal commitment, clearly and without reservation, that under my leadership, CIA will not restart such a detention and interrogation program.
And if you want to talk about waterboarding, it's going to have to be done in a confidential committee because it's restricted and they won't talk about it publicly. I've got the fourth news story of the break, and then the fourth news story of the day, and then we'll take a break. President Donald Trump pulled the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal yesterday, and Iran is pissed off, to say the least. Iranian law. Hey,
did you see them burning the flag?
Iranian lawmakers burned. These are the lawmakers.
These are the lawmakers, correct?
Right,
the
yeah.
people. You don't want to go out there.
The lawgivers.
They burned a paper United States flag in Iran's parliament and chanted the familiar refrain, "Death to America." Later, angry students protested in front of the United States Embassy in Tehran, burning more American flags and offering similar chants against the United States. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, said, quote, "You have made a mistake, Trump," close quote. And he also accused President Trump of lying at least 10 times, but of course could not give any specifics regarding what he was lying about. Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China are all against President Trump withdrawing from the Iranian
I'd like to know,
deal.
does anybody at the round table think that Iran has been acting in good faith under the agreement, since the agreement was signed?
My answer would be simply no. I don't believe they ever acted in good faith. And I think President Obama made a mistake by front-loading such an agreement with so many benefits prior to
What do you mean
corrective.
front-loading?
Well, I believe it came with, what was it, $500 million or $5.5 billion cash? I think I saw a post on it. Plus, the Treasury Department had transferred $99 billion 3 times, I believe.
Well, that was 3 years ago.
Yeah, I believe it was conditioned on the release of those hostages from Iran.
Yeah, but some of the information that you have is a little misplaced, because the money that was returned to Iran was something that had already been set into motion. So that wasn't part of the front-loading deal. It simply wasn't.
It was part of their sanctions that we were withholding some funds,
Right.
Preconditioned that they would follow through on their promises. But we set this agreement in motion without them following through.
No, but see, that money that you're talking about, that's something that we had been holding for the last 10 years. So that was already guaranteed and should have been returned 10 years ago, but we didn't. So
we could have held on to it for another 20 years to force compliance with their
we could have.
denuclearization.
See, the issue that I have with the treaty that Obama did is nobody believes in someone just having universal authority in what he did. He's circumvented the process. It was a non-binding agreement. So they gambled on the fact that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, and the treaty would have remained in place.
Well, it's not a treaty. It's not with Congress. It's just his agreement.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. It wasn't sanctioned by Congress. He had a lot of people that were against it, and he did it unilaterally.
Nothing these days the president does
actually,
is sanctioned by Congress.
Well, interestingly, because I recall that, and I believe it was then Mr. Trump who criticized President
talking about
Obama
Obama.
for sidestepping Congress and engaging unilaterally. And now, the next day, Trump withdraws unilaterally, starts to say, I will engage unilaterally, and President Obama is coming out and now criticizing him for sidestepping Congress and acting unilaterally. They're mere opposites. It's unbelievable.
Do-si-do.
Yeah.
All good points. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Comp Matters, some talk news, and hopefully some answers for employees, employers, and even you independent contractors. We're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more California workers' compensation attorneys than any other system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, $1 a day, A1 Law. And if you want those hard-to-get, sold-out, front-row concert, sports, theater tickets, give my buddy Brian a call, 310-395-3700. 8587. We've got more talk about more news about the volcano in Hawaii. We've got Patriot National Insurance going bankrupt. We're talking about AIG. Uber's got some news. We've got drug use in America. Starbucks has to label now they're causing you cancer. We've got the strike by the UC employees. We've got, of course, opiate lawsuits, homeless housing. We've got some OSHA reports, and we've got Sears and Amazon are now partnering. And, of course, the Boy Scouts are going to let in some girls. We'll be back after a musical break on Work Comp Matters.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far, far as the eye can see? Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people on Work Comp Matters? My name is Steve Appel. We're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more California workers' compensation attorneys than any other system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, $1 a day, A1 Law. And if you want those hard-to-get sold-out, yes, even front row, concert, sports, and theater tickets, give my buddy Brian a call. I know him, and I trust him. 310-395-8587 for Santa Monica Tickets. With the next news story, I think Robert's got an itch. Go ahead and scratch it, baby.
Starting February 2019, the traditional Boy Scout program will also be transformed. It will be known as Scouts BSA and will continue to offer scouting in single-gendered troops, through which troops, including boys and girls, can work to earn the prestigious Eagle Scout rank. The organization name will remain Boy Scouts of America.
Drug use by the American workforce remains at its highest rate in more than a decade, driven by increases in cocaine, methamphetamine, and marijuana. However, prescription opiate use is down. Nationally, the positivity rate for the combined U.S. workforce held steadily at 4.2% in 2017, the same as in 2016. That is still a dramatic increase, over the 3.5% positivity rate from 2012, which represents a 30-year low. The analysis of more than 10 million drug tests the results were done by Quest Diagnostics, a diagnostic information service. I have a question. What the hell is Quest Diagnostics doing releasing 10 million tests?
Well, there's probably not names attached to them, right, Robert?
I have no idea how Quest does their business. It could be an ID number, it could be a name. No clue.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Neither do I.
I would hope it's some sort of identification number that you can't easily identify the individual or know specifically what the test is for unless you're a doctor who knows how to read it.
Well, you know what I always say on WorkCom Matters, follow the money.
Oh, actually, boss, we wanted to talk about Trump in the news on a social level here, because we were talking about politics off air, and as we do here. And I know Kanye West came out with these tweets in support of Trump. I'm talking about Dragon Energy, I think. And we saw Trump's interview on TMZ talking about slavery being a choice, and I wasn't quite sure how to follow it, but then I was talking to Ted, and Ted here was gonna, let me know exactly what the hell I was looking at, because
I think when he made the comment about slavery as a choice, I think a lot of people misunderstood exactly what he meant. I mean, we make choices every day, and I think one of the best examples of exactly what he was saying is this: if those people who saw the movie Amistad.
I did, and I love that movie.
During the travel to America after the slaves had been captured, there's a scene where there's a group of African women holding their babies sitting on the side of the ship. What they then did, knowing what their future was going to be, they fell off the side purposely. They drowned themselves along with their children. So the choice they made was to die and to take their children with them rather than endure a life of slavery, rape, and servitude.
Was Kanye talking in that context?
That's not much of a choice, is it?
Well, it is a choice. It is a choice.
It's actually interesting that Ted brings up that scene. I distinctly remember that scene because in the movie, a couple of days later, the ship realized that they were running out of food and they didn't have enough food to feed all of the slaves on the ship. So they chained 50 of the weakest 400 slaves and they threw 50 people overboard.
Again, everything has a choice. Even if you look at those slaves that were captured and put on the plantation, you have those runners. Now, oftentimes what they would do is catch them and hobble them by breaking their ankles so they could not leave. But what I'm saying is you make choices. And so they decided to run. But they could have also said, I'm going to keep running. You're going to have to kill me because I don't want to be a slave. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in even harsher terms. You have somebody that's in prison, a man. You got these guys, he's going to get raped. You're going to have to kill me because I'm not going to let that happen. You're going to have to kill me. So you, again.
It's one option or the other. It's not good options.
No, but again, at the end of the day, Robert, it's still a choice. It's still a choice. So you can either choose to be raped, you can choose to be a slave, or you can choose to say, you know what, I would rather die.
But Kanye didn't put it that way.
No,
Kanye said he made it seem like it was a choice that had an alternative that wasn't death.
No, but what he's talking about is that, there are always uprisings. There are authoritarian governments where the citizens rise up against and they overthrow. Because you cannot tell me that the number of whites that came to African shores outnumbered the African tribes that were there. You can't convince me of that. Now, they might have had greater weaponry, but that does not mean that they could not have been overwhelmed. And I think
with planning, perhaps you're right. But
I'm thinking in that sense. I know, but what I'm saying, I'm thinking in that sense, that's the choice. You make a choice. You can either, and the Marines have a saying. The saying is death before dishonor. Before I live a life of dishonor, I would rather be dead. Now, are these stark choices? Absolutely, but it does not change the fact that it's a choice.
And in my opinion, with all due respect, if Ted Durden would have said it on WorkCom Matters, it would have been completely different public reaction than Conway saying it over Twitter.
Well, yeah, but
because Ted said it so eloquently.
Well, Kanye said it on TMZ after the Twitter comment, so
Okay.
this was an interview. So he made it seem as if there was a reasonable alternative when there wasn't. And, you know, I come from a background, you know, European Jew. You know, my grandfather went through a lot, you can
Right.
imagine. And, you know, some of the options they had available, you wouldn't really call them options as much as you'd call it death or more death or near death with subjugation, then possible death. It's some people would say that it's honor to try to survive slavery, to
Yeah,
try
I
to
would-
keep surviving, to stay alive.
I think what Ted is essentially saying
You know,
is
so
you
there's
always,
another way to go too.
Yeah, you always have a choice, but it was said many long time ago to be or not to be. With the next news story of the night, to be or not to be, Mr. Mike Zima.
Well, now we're going to talk about lava, folks. New lava vents
Penis
continue.
and cake? I'm sorry.
Magma.
We got to stop doing the show around dinner time.
New lava vents continue to open up on Hawaii's Big Island this week as a result of the Kilauea volcano eruption, destroying homes and prompting evacuations in the region. Although the images of roiling lava flows, demolishing homes, and chewing up cars are terrifying, no fatalities caused by the volcanic activity have been reported. Findings from a database of global volcano fatalities published last year in the Journal of Applied Volcanology offer clues. Deaths linked to flowing lava are relatively rare, accounting for a tiny fraction of the world's volcano-driven mortality.
Thousands of UC employees this week are staging a 3-day strike for better pay and working conditions. On Monday, more than 20,000 custodians, cooks, lab technicians, nurse aides, and other members of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Local 3299, that might be referred to as 3299, walked off their jobs. By Tuesday, 2 more unions joined in the sympathy strikes. The union and the UC reached a bargaining impasse last year. The university has said it will not meet the workers' demands.
As lawsuits over the opioid crisis has spread nationwide, the country's most populous state has largely stayed on the sidelines. Now, 30 counties in California are jumping in, seeking recovery of alleged taxpayer losses from the major makers and manufacturers of opioid painkillers. The counties, largely centered in the rural, northern, and central regions of the state, and each filing lawsuits in federal court. The actions will likely be sent to a federal judge in Ohio who is overseeing hundreds of opioid lawsuits filed across the country.
Starbucks Corporation and other roasters.
Oh,
and retailers.
I'm sorry. I love this one. Ted, start it over.
Good.
I love this. Go for it.
Starbucks Corporation and other roasters and retailers must serve up a cancer warning with coffee sold in California, a Los Angeles judge has ruled. Superior Court Judge Elihu Burley, in a ruling published on Monday, said that Starbucks and other coffee sellers did not show that the risk from consuming acrylamide, a possible cancer-causing byproduct created during coffee roasting, was offset by benefits from drinking coffee.
Starbucks actually tried to argue that drinking coffee was better for you than the potential risk of causing cancer. So now Starbucks has to put on, well, I don't know if it's going to be on their cups, if it's going to be on their 1-pound packs of coffee, if it's going to be on the door when you walk in, that coffee causes cancer.
Could I say this, boss? I think this is a big mistake.
I'm looking right at you, and I want your opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a big mistake, okay? Because now you're labeling something that causes cancer the same as you do a pack of cigarettes, right? So for
Right.
kids, now you've made an equivalence, right? That pack of smokes right there is the same as that coffee that everyone drinks.
But here's the crazy thing about that. Okay, then why don't we have banners in the air? Because you breathe air is going to cause cancer. I mean, it's just absolutely
It's true.
ridiculous.
And some
this is
things
what
cause
I mean.
more cancer than others.
It's political correctness run amok. I mean, there are so many products that we consume on a daily basis that could cause cancer. Water can cause cancer because of some of the chemicals that are in that, but they say those are at acceptable levels. Well, over a period of time, it can contribute to cancer. The air that you breathe, when you have, on the top of a building in New York City, a scientist took a post and simply put glue on it. And there were particles from tires, there were particles from dust, there was all sorts of things that were on it that we inhale every day. Every day. So it is ridiculous that to talk about this little byproduct that's in coffee. Now you need to post a sign on about causing cancer.
But it is dangerous that this now makes these cancer warnings they have less weight when you use them all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? There's less credibility to these kids now who might not understand that smoking cigarettes is a serious cancer risk and addictive behavior.
Right.
And coffee may be addictive and maybe a cancer risk, but not the same.
On the way to the studio here today, I heard what the kids are doing now. Now, a couple of months ago, they were taking those soap tablets and putting them in their mouth. And
the Tide Pods.
Okay.
They weren't really doing that. No one is that dumb. That's just got to be something on the internet.
Well, there's something else on the internet I just heard
People
today.
eating detergent.
Kids are taking antiperspirant deodorant, and they're timing how long they could continue spraying it under their arms before they have to stop because of the pain.
Wow. Well, that's why a few people are going to get ahead, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one of those people. Congratulations.
I'm going to quote Stalin. And I only quote him in one specific manner, something that he said. He said, everybody has a right to be stupid. Some people just abuse the privilege. And that certainly sounds like one of those.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
American International Group faces an uphill climb to convince shareholders to approve a $43.1 million pay package for CEO Brian Dupriol.
That's AIG, everybody, who I think was named for 6 to 12 months. Chartis. And then they went back to calling themselves, call me AIG. It was just temporary. Go ahead.
This was at the company's annual meeting on Wednesday. AIG stock has dropped 13% since Dupriol took charge of the company last May. The company's pay arrangements include $24.2 million for former CEO Peter Hancock, who stepped down last year under pressure, with a $5 million cash award, quote, for his service through the transition, end quote, to Dupriol, according to the company's annual proxy filing to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission last March.
My friends, it's getting hot, and it's getting so hot that Cal OSHA is issuing a high heat advisory to urge all employers with outdoor workers to prevent heat illness as the weather warms up in parts of Southern California. Temperatures in San Bernardino, Palm Springs, Indio, and El Centro are expected to reach over 100 degrees today through Thursday. It is important for employers to check forecasts and monitor the temperatures to prepare for periods of high heat, said Cal OSHA Chief Julian Sum. That information should be used to closely observe workers for possible heat stress and modify their work schedules as needed.
Yeah, boss, I got a question for you here. So I think everyone around the table was pretty much in agreement that the president acting unilaterally in entering into agreement, now backing out a new president out of the agreement, that's not appropriate. But would you guys care if the agreement that we get, the next deal, so to speak, is better?
I'd like to see it more fully negotiated, yes.
I would simply like to be sanctioned by Congress. That's what I would like to see.
So
I don't
proper
like
procedures.
Yes, absolutely. The thought of any president just acting unilaterally in a way that is contrary to the way the rules were set offends me.
I do not believe in backing out of agreements. I believe if you look someone in the eye, if you shake their hand, you put down in paper an agreement that's not against public policy, you sign on the dotted line, you need to keep to your commitments no matter how poorly you may think they are later on. Now, that being said, if part of the agreement between the United States and Iran was that Iran was supposed to do certain things, and not do certain things. And then they faltered or willfully disregarded or did not do what they were supposed to do, and that gave us an out in that agreement, then I'm okay with breaking agreements.
I think there was insufficient verification in the original document.
Then without proof, I am not in favor of breaking out of a legitimate agreement.
Yes. Well, also, there's the idea that the United States never entered into this agreement. President Barack Obama entered into this agreement.
Well, that's the United States, my boy.
Well, but again,
is it?
No, because
yes, it is.
Well,
because if you take a look at legislation 114-74 that was passed that had to deal specifically with Iran, the purpose of the treaties is that the president and Congress have to act together on international issues. This was an international issue.
Looks like for
what are you
reasons just
saying?
like
it wasn't
this.
a valid agreement on its face?
It was
No,
it was hollow, kind of.
no, and I say that because of the fact that everybody knows it's a non-binding agreement. So if it's a non-binding
Well,
agreement,
if it's a non-binding agreement, then we can back out any time.
and that's what Trump did. So when
Does
Obama,
the agreement say that?
no, it's understood that because anytime
It's understood, but it doesn't say it.
No,
Well,
it
it's an
doesn't- it
executive
doesn't-
order,
It
that's
doesn't.
why.
Yeah, exactly. It
Oh,
does not.
so any executive orders are non-binding.
Well, can
Is that-
be overruled by another order.
Yeah, by an incoming president. See,
Correct.
if it had been sanctioned by Congress, Trump would not be able to do what he did. It would have required Congress's approval to get out of the treaty. But by making it a non-binding agreement, by the fact it did not go through Congress, then that made it easy for any president that came in afterwards to walk away from the deal.
Fair enough. Now I get it.
Yeah, it's an executive order. He issued one instating the deal, and then the new president has issued one canceling that out.
Right.
I'm interested to see that generally the American people seem to be on the upswing regarding the potential deal that Trump could swing, mostly buoyed by this Korean exchange here, the hostages. People are starting thinking maybe we're going to do something good now. So perhaps if this next agreement, it just looks really good, perhaps a lot of people, not including Ted here, because Ted wants to see things done the appropriate way, maybe it will. Maybe Trump could stretch a deal out that's so good he could reach back out to Congress and say, will you guys approve this, please? Could we get some lasting peace? But the problem with that is you're negotiating with Iran, and we've seen how that's like. What are you really doing? You're just exchanging words on paper, and maybe you'll give them real money that's theirs, arguably. But in the end, what are they going to use that money for? Funding Hezbollah to launch indiscriminate attacks against Israel. I think they fund part of Hamas. I think something like that.
Correct.
Too, right? And it's good they have all those supplies for those hospitals they don't build, because it really get in the way of those tunnels that they've been using that supplies for. So that's unfortunate. So I think the American people generally have had enough with giving anything to these to that area of the world, to that culture, we can call it. And anytime that we just have any president who gives them, the rip up of paper or any type of, thumb, we kind of applaud him.
Embattled retailer Sears announced on Wednesday that it was teaming up with e-commerce giant Amazon and a customer service venture to help service vehicles, which sent Sears shares surging approximately 20%. Sears said that customers who purchase tires on Amazon's website can go to select Sears Auto Center locations for full service installation. When checking out on the e-commerce site, users schedule an appointment for the service. Sears also announced that its Die-Hard brand tires would be sold on Amazon for the first time, though its auto centers will install any type of tire purchase on Amazon's website. Following the news, shares of Sears saw their biggest percent increase since March 2017, jumping more than 17% during the trading session. The stock was up more than 8% so far this month and more than 9% so far this year.
Got to be
Kudos to
totally.
Sears.
Got to be totally happy for Sears. I mean, actually, the original Amazon.com.
Yeah,
going
the
back to
catalog.
what, the 30s, 40s, 50s, the catalog. You order it in the catalog and you get it delivered a couple of months later or whatnot.
Yeah, that was a big deal back then.
It seems like a perfect marriage, a perfect merger.
But it's a much smaller merger than you think here. Well, not merger, but business relationship. Amazon's market cap is over $700 billion, while Sears is in the $300
But
million
Sears does not have to
range.
close their brick-and-mortar locations. It gives them a reason to keep them open.
Hopefully it gives them new life, because obviously
Exactly,
the business has been struggling for quite some time.
Yes, it has been.
Exactly.
So I think this will be a necessary shot in the arm.
Put it this way, boss. When you mentioned it, I had to look up their symbol for stock, because I don't look at the small caps. I like the larger companies, what Apple's doing today, what Amazon, what Google's doing. That kind of shows how our economy is doing, right? The bigger companies. Sears is not one of those companies.
And by the way, speaking of that, my boy, I'm starting to pay close to $4 a gallon for gas. I do not like it. When Trump first became president, gas prices went down. They have slowly creeped up. I am not happy.
Well, the Iran stuff hasn't helped.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see, the 30-year fixed price mortgage, I think, depending on if you're conforming rate, you can still get pretty close to 4.25. I know that when Trump became president, right around that time, it's about 4. So it's only gone up about 1/4 of a point.
Yeah, money's got a little bit more expensive. The economy's improved a bit. Unemployment's gone a little bit down. We've had a little bit of expansion and contraction. It's kind of like breathing.
Unemployment is definitely down. Less people are unemployed than before Trump took office. They're calculating it differently. But a lot of people that are reporting or they're calculating being unemployed, they're working like a part-time basis, be it Uber or Lyft or some type of gig economy, so to speak.
I think I saw a post that said there's enough jobs for everybody in America right now for a first time in forever.
And that's the interesting dichotomy in that sense, because the jobless rate is down, but the amount of money that people are making per annum is down significantly as well.
And Ted and I did not discuss this before the show.
No, we did not.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Well, interestingly, we also have a high homeless population. You guys, as we all know, we talk about this.
And sorry, Robert. And in addition to that, it was just announced within the past couple of days that California has taken over the 5th gross national product in the world. So we've gone from 6, now we're number 5 in the world. But the homeless has gone up. The percentage of people on welfare and needing public assistance has gone up, but our GMP has shot through the roof. Go ahead.
Well, it seems to be that some people are getting more, while some people have none at all, right? But I don't blame that on the people who have a lot. Most of these people have it for one reason, is they're hard workers, okay? And the people that you see out on the street, you see them doing drugs right then and there. It's become quite a situation, especially in San Francisco. If you know the BART system there, the subway, if you guys have seen that. We out here have the Riverwalk right out in Orange County, where there's a bunch of needles.
And actually, I'm just checking over my local freeway underpasses, and encampments are starting to develop. I think we have one last news story of the night, and then we're unfortunately going to run out of time. But go ahead, Mike.
Well, I just wanted to get this in. Former Governor George Deukmejian passed away yesterday. He was 89 years old. Born in 1925, I believe.
Once again, I have to very much thank Attorney Hillary Bricken for coming on last week, but it's such a pleasure to be at full strength with Mike, Ted, and Robert. It gives me my security blanket. I feel like I'm Linus in Peanuts. Thank you, guys. Seriously, any burning desires before we say goodbye to listeners?
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Mike, good to see you again.
It's great to be here again.
What can I say? It's been another wonderful edition of Work Comp Matters. Please subscribe if you like us, and if you don't like us, tell a friend and subscribe. You've got news, talk, and hopefully some answers for employers, employees, and independent contractors. We haven't forgotten about you. On the board for Scott Walton of Uncle Studios, working out the technical difficulties. For my right-hand man, keeping me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time, Mike Zyma. For the best-dressed man in California workers' compensation, Mr. Ted Durden. For my protege, attorney Robert Ozeron. Halfway around the world in Germany, attorney John Scalia. And all the good people back at WorkComp Central that continue to support and approve of this project, including, but not limited to, Leaf File and Jake Paris. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week for another edition of Work Comp Matters.